the Word. Saturating with the Word. Saturating our children with the Word. Now I want to look at something very important in verse 27. That He might present to Himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought also to love their own wives. Now, look at this. What is Christ doing? Christ gave His life for the sake of the church, to redeem the church. He rose again from the dead, and what is He doing? He's constantly working. He's working on behalf of the church to sanctify her, to make her holy, to make her beautiful. And what is the purpose of that? So that one day He can present the church to Himself and she'll be totally pleasing. You see that? That's your job also. Let me put it this way, gentlemen. If after 10 years of marriage your wife isn't pleasing to you, you failed. We lay down our life. We work in the sanctification of our wife through the teaching of the Word, that the Word would mold her. We invest our life in her so that when she's presented before us, she's pleasing to us. It's the same way with children. I see parents that get so disgusted with their children. Their boy's 15 years old and is an absolute idiot. I mean, just an idiot. He is. He's 15 years old. He's an idiot. The father goes, my son's an idiot. I don't know what's wrong with him. He's just immoral. He's this or that. And I say, stop. How much time did you invest in your son? So that you could present your son to yourself when he came of age and he would be pleasing to you. Now we have to be careful here because there are some excellent biblical parents whose sons have turned in to immoral things. And there are some parents in churches that were utter failures as parents, and yet their sons and daughters turned out to be glorious missionaries for Christ. So I don't want you to think that a successful or biblical parent is one whose kids always come out right. You're a successful biblical parent simply because you've sought to submit your life and your family to the Word of God. But at the same time, remember this. You complain about your wife not being what she ought to be. You complain about your children not being what they ought to be. But how much have you invested your life in them so as to present them to yourself as something pleasing? Guys, this family thing, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. A tremendous amount of work. But it's good. It's good. It's good. Now, he says, so husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church. Now, I want to put an error away, a heresy away, and that is this. We ought to love our neighbor as ourselves. We know that. We ought to love our wives as ourselves. So the psychologist comes back and says, if you don't love yourself, you can't love everybody else. That's not what Jesus is teaching. Jesus is not teaching when He says love your neighbor as yourself. He's not teaching you that you need to love yourself more so that you can love other people. Listen, you do not have a problem with loving yourself. Okay? If there's one commandment you got down, it's that. You're in love with yourself. Okay? You don't need any more love. You're drowning in love for yourself. What he's saying is not that you need to love yourself more so that you can love others. He's just pointing out a fact. Men love themselves. But you need to love your neighbor that way. That's what he's teaching. Okay? So none of this psychobabble. Well, I just don't love myself enough. If I go out and buy myself a bass boat, then I'll be able to love my wife in a greater way. That's not what he's teaching. All right? He's saying you need to love her. You are one with her. You can never be whole apart from her. You just can't. She's unhealthy, you're unhealthy. If you're unhealthy, she'll be unhealthy. You see, everything's riding on you. Marriage, someone should have talked to you before you said, I do. Because now you have put yourself in a terrible predicament. You're going to stand before God. We have a thing in Peru, I've heard people say many times, that a man who does not take seriously his biblical responsibilities as a father and a husband is like a blind man driving a speedboat down the Amazon, drunk in the pitch black night, which is deadly. The Amazon, the deadly thing about the Amazon is you're going around there, and there may be a tree this big around, 4 foot in diameter, submerged a foot under the water. I can't tell you the nights I've stood on the bows of boats, hanging on just by a rope, and telling the motorista, telling the guy driving the boat, izquierda, izquierda, to the left, derecha, derecha, to the right, guiding him off of those things. Because you run up on him, it's over. A friend of mine, a couple of friends with me one time came down from the States, and they were in the boat, and they were terrified. It was midnight, and we're going down the river, and they all put life jackets on. And I said, guys, get those life jackets off. They said, why? I said, if we wreck this boat out in the middle of the Amazon, the last thing you want to do is survive. Oh, look at the floating bagel, the alligator said. But you see how dangerous it is? You want to throw yourself away, go ahead and do it, but now you're going to take a wife and children with you. And that is what we need to see. We need to see this. And so he concludes down here. He says, verse 33, nevertheless, each individual among you also is to love his own wife, even as himself. And the wife must see to it that she respects her husband. A lot of times I like to teach men and women together because I want to put before them something. This obedience to God. It's not just unconditional love or commitment to one another. That's not going to sustain you. But unconditional obedience to the commandments of God. Your wife, you must understand how much your wife needs your love. She must understand how much you need her honor and her respect. I know of a woman that if you, after a dinner at her house, if you walk up to her and you say, this was just marvelous, the table, the dinner, everything, that woman will stand there and she will say, thank you very much, I've done this for the honor of my husband. She lives to honor her husband. That's amazing. That's amazing. Now we're going to have to close here. I wanted to get around to the children, which is so very important, and the passage that I was telling you about, which is Deuteronomy chapter 6, and we're not going to go there, but that should be the focus of everything we do in the home. We teach our children, yes, but with what goal? Not that they become legalistic Pharisees, not that they necessarily become missionaries or preachers, or that they know more Bible verses. We teach them that they might love the Lord their God, recognize that the Lord their God is one, and they might love Him with all their heart, all their soul, all their strength. Okay, well then we'll run there really quick. Let's go to Deuteronomy, and this is what gives clarity. This gives so much clarity here to where you're supposed to go. So many times we get all these little commandments that are so important. I don't like to use the word little command, but we get all these little commandments without really knowing the direction of the whole thing, and we just get confused and boggled down with a whole bunch of little intricacies without knowing what the big picture is. I mean, why as men are we teaching our wives and teaching our children? In Deuteronomy 6, we'll just start in verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. Boy, just get that truth across to your wife and your children. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. There's one God here in this house.